Hey, this is Scott Garibay, and I'm here with
Nerdarchist Dave.
And I'm Nerdarchist Ted.
And today we're going to talk about 5-page adventure design.
Before we do, head down to the description below where you can find Nerdarchy, the newsletter. Learn how to game with us as well as get weekly gaming tips.
So I wanted to talk about this. I'm very fortunate to be linked up with you guys, and you guys have given me a great place for role-playing game articles that I really enjoy writing. So I write articles for Nerdarchy on the Nerdarchy website, and I just completed something that I had never done before in my entire life. I wrote an entire adventure in 5 pages, and so I had a game I'm really excited about, and I was so excited about it, I wanted to write an adventure for it. So I really had to think, but you know, Ted has really given me a lot of tips for writing an article, taking something that's a neat idea and condensing it down into a good article, right? And so I had to think, how do I get an article, how do I get an adventure boiled down to where it fits into a concise article? Right. And so one of the things I think is the reason why I'm bringing this forward is this, 5 pages of content is about what you would need for an adventure, and it's not too overwhelming where you could write an adventure for 1 session or maybe even up to 3 sessions and it fits. So here's the structure that I developed in order to create content for the Nerdarchy website, and I think it works perfectly for building adventures for your role-playing game. So it launches into 3 sections, and then the last section branches into 3 more sections. So it's launch and location. So when you're writing an adventure, think launch and location. You want to say
this is your setup, and this is the description of where the campaign or the session is starting.
That's exactly right. So setup is a great word, and the reason I'm using that word launch is you want it to be an active thing that's happening, something that
you want the players to participate.
Exactly. So you're kind of launching that the adventure out. So in the launch, you say, here's what's going to happen in this adventure. You give a summary of the adventure, and you say, this is the structure of the adventure, right? The locations, you're going to say, this is going to happen between this city and the road between this city and this city, or you're going to say, this is going to happen on this one floor of this dungeon, and by the end of the adventure they're going to get to 3.
It's your adventure path.
Exactly, yeah. And so when you're building this, you're going to write it for yourself, so that you're going to be able to present it to your players, and then you're going to expose that information to your players as you go throughout it, right? So launch and location, you build those. You give a summary of the adventure, and you list out all your major locations, okay?
Now, my experience with launch and location in your games is there's usually like 3 different choices in that initial phase.
You're exactly right. So, and actually, that's a great point. So, one of the things is when I built this for the Nerdarchy game, I actually built it for here's one structure. And actually, one of the things that's exciting is I built multiple locations so that it can go in different directions, and different things can happen in different directions.
Now the one you built for the site is a bit of a railroad, I must admit. But for you guys that don't know, it actually happens on a train.
Yeah, that's true. The whole adventure happens on a train, that is a great point. So on the Nerdarchy website, there's an article called Lockport to Tyrmor, and it is an adventure that absolutely stands as an example for designing this way for your tabletop.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the description below. But not only that, it's also I believe you link to it in the article, but it's a free game that they can download.
That's true. Ghost Lines. So Ghost Lines is a steampunk railroad game, and it's really fantastic, and it's great. And
as in, it happens on a railroad, not that you're railroading your players.
That's exactly right. It does happen.
But that actually does bring up the point that if you want your players to follow a certain path, and you present it in such a way that they're already on, say, a train, you can't just get off unless the train stops. So if the train doesn't...
Yeah, there's certain times when it's logical to actually railroad your players, in the sense that when they make a decision, they're kind of locked into it. Like, I decided to get on the train. Well, yeah, that you don't really have the option of getting off. Where it wasn't a railroad, would have been where the player could say, "No, I'm not getting on the train," or "I'm getting on a different train," or we're going to walk. What? No one walks.
And so, actually, one of the things that's exciting is definitely check out Lockport Lockport and Tyrmore. And one of the things that's interesting is you could take this exact adventure and run it in D&D the next week, and the way you would do it is that train just becomes a caravan.
Well,
right?
you know
what I mean?
I actually ran an online one-shot game in Ebron on the Lightning Rails, which is essentially a train.
Right, you're exactly right. Yeah,
I don't remember the name of the gameplay. It was something Escort and Bad Luck Lady or something along those lines.
It was fun. We actually got to see the Aarakocra.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
first time that actually
before
happened.
they were brought into 5e, which
No. It was 5e.
It was right after it was released.
Yeah.
Yes.
Aarakocra, great new race. So we talked about launch and location, and then non-player characters, and this is just great. And in the article you can see non-player character is here's the character's name, and I had to boil down what do you need for a non-player character?
Essence,
Yeah. So here's your non-player character. Here's their gender. Here is their age, and here is what they are, right? And so that a lot of times that'll be cast, right? But like one of the things is the major catalyst for the adventure, the person who's kicking off, like the main villain. I've called them a catalyst, right? And I didn't really say because sometimes like so I have. This person is a train guard. This person is a gambler on the train. This person is a debutante, right? That little essence tag right there, that tells you who and what they are. But your catalyst that's one of the things I thought was really cool too. You have villain, henchman, minion, right? But I love the idea of calling someone a catalyst because sometimes the word villain is a little too strong. Exactly, and they might have different motivations.
Well, antagonist works equally well. I mean, just same
well,
thing.
yeah, exactly. But the idea of
you can be an antagonist without being a villain. That's all I'm saying.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I usually do line those up, but you're right, and that was my point. Was
if you're a Republican, then the Democrats are your antagonists, and vice versa. You're the hero of your own story for the most part. So
it's the person that is
opposed.
Yeah, opposed. That's a great point. Yeah, and as I tried to write this in a way where, and so that was kind of interesting. So you list out your non-player characters, and it literally and also you just list. After that, one line of what makes them distinct. Mm-hmm. And so you can see how non-player characters can be represented in about 2 sentences, which I thought was really, kind of fun, and it definitely fits within the game. When you bring those non-player characters to the table, they're going to be fully formed. You're going to have an idea of them in your head, but it didn't take 2 hours to build them.
Yeah. I went through and looked at your NPCs, and they were all 1 to 2 lines each.
Yeah, and so it's concise.
It was essentially who they are, what they did, and what their thing was, what they liked, what was their their hobby or their obsession or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the last part, in order to write an adventure, you need your launch and your location. Those are at the top. You need your non-player characters, and the last part is the events. And this is one I just really want to thank you guys because I'd never really thought about events in the way that I did in order to write this. And so I realized that events break down into 3. The way I want to present events in my adventure broke down into 3. So events breaks down into 3 more subjects. So each event, you write down what's going to happen in this event, right? And then you say discover. You go into 3 more breakouts, which is discovery, conflict, and choice. And so discovery is you take your non-player characters and you show your player characters something new about the location or the non-player character. And so they get to discover something, and it is showing that world in a more broad and more rich light. And so I've seen, definitely you've used this in your games where when you bring us into a new town, and you like in one of the Griffin Gaff games recently, we went into just like a dive bar, right? But the person who was filling the mugs and giving us information, he was very morose. He was kind of like almost seemed depressed, and so we got to discover different elements that made him that character.
Right.
And so it was really kind of a neat way, and that's one of the things that prompted me to say there should be discovery, something that's discovered within this event. And so it's new information to the players.
Right.
And then conflict. The easiest one, I think.
Combat,
yeah, exactly. That's really natural.
It does, but it doesn't have to be combat.
That's true.
Right. Conflict could be solving a mystery.
Yeah.
It could be politically routing an enemy.
Yeah.
So there's definitely other ways of doing it, but in most RPGs it does break down the combat.
And go ahead.
I was saying, and conflicts, can breed a point that leads to the third part, which is choice.
Yeah.
Do you kill the bad guys?
Yeah.
You know, are you the heroes that are above actually killing, you know, whatever it is that you're fighting, or do you have no problem essentially ending someone's life?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so with conflict in the actual adventure, Lockport to Tyrmore, there's a woman who writes abstracts about birds, and someone says, "Oh, look at that bird out the window." And the conflict for that event is her saying, "That bird is not what you identified. It's a different bird, and the bird you identified would be hundreds of miles away." And she gets into a heated debate and like gets really in the face with this person, and that conflict is just a conversation. So to your point, you can absolutely do that. The last one is choice, like you said, and I really feel it's important that in each event the choice could be small or it could be huge, but I really like, for each event saying these players should make a choice for what's happening here, and presenting them with a choice, because it shows the power of the player characters. Now I'm curious, do you guys think that you can trigger a choice in each event, or do you think choices should be at the level of the adventure itself? Does it take away from having a choice if it's that frequent, if it's each event? What do you guys think?
Well, just as part of playing the game, you're just going to make choices based on the information you're given.
Right.
You're going to choose to do something or not do something.
Yeah.
Either way, you've still made a choice.
I think at any point in time, a properly run game, at any moment, players can make choices. If
otherwise you're just telling them a story anyway.
if like in my game, when you guys got to Trisgard's the Bold's Tower, if half the party was like, you know what, we've already had a perilous journey, I really don't want to aid you on your quest anymore, we're going to head back to Gryffindor. And every single person at the table would make the choice right then and there. Do they continue on aiding you in your quest, or do they go with the person who brought up the idea heading back to Gryffindor? At any point in time, choice is made, and that is what shows the power of the player character. Now, if it turns out it's like, okay, well, you can make that choice, but this is where the DM is taking the story, I'm not going to split the party, I'm going to run with what's here. If you're going to do that, then I'll see you next session. Those are the kind of things that can happen, and more power to you. But what happens if that choice prompts everyone to say, you know what, you're right, this situation is too dangerous for us to deal with, even though we all saw that it wasn't, and everyone heads back to Gryffindor. Now, as the DM, I'm confronted with, well, where does the adventure take you? What happens? What choices do I make as the DM because this quest was unfulfilled? How has the world changed by that? So the players are always going to have the choice, but their choices are absolutely going to impact the world, regardless of which way they go.
So maybe it shouldn't be choice, but maybe resolution.
That's interesting.
Because naturally resolution follows conflict. It either gets resolved or it does not. So and if we're talking about a specific, because choices just might be too broad. But now if you're saying choices based off of conflict, then that would actually literally be resolution of the conflict.
So one of the things is each of these is independent. So
Okay.
in fact, discovery can be quite independent from conflict.
So you're saying,
exactly.
So let me clarify for myself and for you guys.
Yeah.
So discovery is just finding things out about the setting and the campaign and the story that's unfolding right now.
Exactly.
Conflict is the problems that are happening within the story, in the confines of the story right now, which may or may not have anything to do with the discoveries they've made.
Yeah.
I mean, there should be some interconnectivity,
Well, actually,
but it doesn't have to be.
So let me explain a perfect example of this. So this happened in the Gryffindor game very recently, and actually, I really have been crystallizing how I write an adventure based on watching the Gryffindor game that Ted is running. Right. So my character, Aeson Shardgale, a human wizard, goes and meets his master Trisgar the Bold, who is a halfling. In that encounter, right, in that event of meeting my master, we had a discovery, which was we got to see he lives in a tower, and that tower floats off the ground. I didn't know that. I had written Trisgar the Bold, but I just
it wasn't floating.
it was just right on the ground.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So he lived in a tower, and within that, you actually described his he keeps a table where he eats right in the center, but over on the right is where all of his books are, right? And one of the things that was really interesting was I didn't know he lived in a tower. I didn't know what his room looked like.
Right.
None of that. That was all discovery of showing me this is what this character's world looks like, right? Then
and you I had given you the option of, what do you want to do with your mentor, and you had said, well, I wrote this bit. Whatever you want to do with it, that's your choice.
Exactly.
So I said, okay, all right, and I wanted to bring your character's past back in so that it incorporated your character's backstory into the events that are unfolding. I feel it's important to have these type of events happen,
but then the conflict in that scene, in that event, was David's character
inserted the conflict.
Right. He came and he said, hey, Master Trisgard, Aeson has abandoned your values, right? And literally, Trisgar, beat me with a stick and said, how dare you, forget what I told you, right? And so there was conflict, right? Which was distinctly independent from the discovery, right? And then there was a choice that came, right? In us meeting Trisgar, before we left Trisgar, the choice was not even mine, right? That's right. So Obsid Strandon is my character's apprentice. When we left, I said, hey, you've served me really well, Obsid, but Trisgar taught me everything I know. Do you want to stay with him or do you want to go with me? And so it was a choice of a non-player character. And so it was a perfect example of discovery, conflict, choice, all interdependent, not even dependent on that, all within the event, all independent of each other. And I thought it was really masterful adventure writing, and it really made me think this is what it takes to write an adventure. And that's what brought forward this 5-page adventure design, thinking I can write something in a concise way, and each event should have all these living parts, all these things that kind of bring forth a real living, breathing world that my players can see the way you do. And so it was really interesting. And, and I think one of the reasons why I wanted to present it is writing for Nerdarchy, thinking about how I create adventures has really helped me to crystallize this. And it also brings it down to a point. So I think one of the last things I'll say is if you're a writer out there and you create content, Nerdarchy has a great place for it. So I've been incredibly blessed being able to write for you guys. I've written, I think, approaching like 10 articles now, and it's really helped me to take a million different ideas that I had scrabbled down on 3x5s and turn them into real things that people can really enjoy and that are coalesced and in one place. So if you're a writer out there, I encourage you to join me and Ty and Art and a growing stable of talented writers at the Nerdarchy.
We also have Nubs or Nigel, and it looks like we have potentially a new author that's going to be joining us in the near future. Yeah. But if you are someone that likes to create RPG related content or RPG or fantasy fiction, that kind of stuff, you can contact us at nerdarchy@gmail.com and we can...
Or just even nerdy stuff. I mean, Ty, he produces all kinds of crazy stuff that's interesting and fun. Like he did a piece on nerd dating sites.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
We do say that, we're for all things nerdy. So as long as you can fit into that very large niche, like I said, contact us at nerdarchy@gmail.com and we can figure stuff out, whether you want to just occasionally submit an article or whether you want to, hey, I want to write and release on certain dates, whatever. And we can try to work that out.
That, and we also try, if you're doing anything else independent, we try to give attribution links back.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whatever it is you're doing, and promote you for helping us out and giving us content, which we appreciate.
It's a great platform for good content. Absolutely.
So with that, you guys, what are your thoughts? We did all 5 parts.
That's all of it. Yeah.
All 5 pages. So what do you think? How do you create your adventures? I'm always fascinated and curious to hear how other DMs do it, because he does 5 pages, I do 5 lines.
5 lines, dear Lord, how much are you writing there, Dave?
Yeah.
2 sentences, sometimes 2 words.
Yeah, but the point is, all DMs have their own style and do it different. I'm always curious to see that. You guys let us know in the comments below how you do it. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can head over to nerdarchy.com and get some sweet swag.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.